All right, let's do it.
Let's do it. Streaming time. Podcast, Shin-Arken Podcast, episode 2, that has been delayed forever in a day. How you doing, Arkin?
I'm doing freaking awesome, man. Just hanging out,
Excellent.
man.
Now, I've got some bed music going. That should be good.
hmm
Again, it's a podcast, so there isn't going to be any viewer interaction or anything. So I welcome whatever to everyone who's coming out and hanging out during this podcast, but it's just a podcast. Go for an hour. We're just gonna have some discussion, focusing on the Guardian this time. Have Arkin be the.
What the hell kind of build is that?
It's one that I derped around with. Yeah, I am no expert with Guardians. This is why the roles are reversed this time, and we're letting you be the resident expert because I can't do Guardian yet.
That was amazing, dude. 10, 10, 10, 30, 10.
That's how you, that. Wait, that was the one that they gave me. That was the one that they gave me when I was.
Oh, for the start?
Yeah, I even when I was streaming that, I looked at it. I'm like, what build is this? Is this a thing?
That's the new meta.
It's the new meta.
That's the new meta.
Oh, that was so terrible. I don't think this is a thing.
No, 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 no. But yeah, how do you want to? We can go about what we did last time if
Just
you want.
yeah, we could do some general stuff and then jump into whatchamacallit, Guardian discussion stuff.
Okay. All right. Begin. What do you think so far? What do you think of the current meta? I guess you could say.
Yeah, we could do current meta, and then we could also do whatchamacallit. We could do kind of the things that they announced for their high level quote unquote changes that is going to be coming in a bit. So current meta wise, it seems like I'm gonna go on a limb here. I'm gonna say it seems like conditions are better than they used to be. Like it seems
Yeah.
like conditions. Yes, conditions are still a bit ridiculous, but they seem to people seem to have learned how to cope with them, how to handle them.
To some degree, but others, the main way that most people cope with them is through Lissa runes, believe it or not.
True.
Because a lot of professions don't have a ton of consistent, you know, condition removal. They may have some condition removal, but the cooldowns may be too long, so they have to, fall back on Lissa runes for a backup, which even then may not help you or, save you from the condition-heavy meta that we have right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you on that. Like, it may just be that people have figured out, okay, these happen to be the best things to handle all of the conditions that are flying around, whereas baseline, it's still crazy, but it's not. People have kind of adapted to the meta to where it's not
Right.
as
Well,
apparently.
they've accepted it, I think, is more the appropriate term.
Yeah, adapted and accepted.
Because again, you really can't do much except accept it and just try your best to work with it. But there's only so much you can do, so you deal with it.
Yeah. Now, as for the rest of the meta, what else we got flying around right now? We have a lot of, well, the control aspects have always really been there. You've got the stuns, you've got the knockdowns and all that. It's always been a part of the meta, but it's never really been an overt issue. Would you say that, or?
No, I think they're doing pretty well with the amount of stuns there are in this game. Like what they did with crap, I completely forgot that skill with Mace. What's the burst skill?
Skullcrack.
Oh, Skullcrack. They added an animation to it. Now you can dodge it.
Yep.
That's great. Stuff like that, it's perfect. Makes sense. So if they keep doing stuff like that with long duration stuns, then I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and actually that kind of leads into we can either segue with it or we can just kind of aside it, but that kind of leads into the whole thing that they're doing with pin down for the warrior. Something that a lot of people are, there's always the QQ about the nerfs and whatnot, but I honestly think it's a good change because pin down is one of those abilities that has always been really powerful. Just for what it is, it's very powerful. It allows for whatchamacallit, it allows for control, damage, and there's no real way to avoid it. There's no tell on it other than, you happen to dodge at the right point in time.
Right.
But adding animation to it, I think, is a very, very good thing to do. Adding an animation to cast time, because it's it's part of the reason why Hambo is so popular right now. It's really good. It's too good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you got immobilize. I think it's a 4-second immobilize, 6 stacks
It's a
of bleed.
long immobilize.
Yeah, and then on top of that, you've got no tell,
Obvious. Yeah, exactly.
and even the projectile speed is actually pretty quick. I mean, you can see the projectile, but by the time you see it, you're already hit by it. In most cases, unless they max,
Absolutely.
yeah, unless they max range it, which, uh. But anyway,
Well, even then, it's still pretty rough because again, you're looking at something that has very little tell, and again, if they hit you with it, even if you don't even spec it to condition damage, you're still going to take a lot of damage.
yep,
You know, so it's something that needs to be looked at,
yep,
which is good because again, that's the way you kind of have to do it. You know,
yep. And then
and
let's,
that's a great change. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
So I no complaints there. I mean, some warriors are gonna feel, you know. That's the one thing that people need to understand is that just because you get a nerf doesn't necessarily mean it's not for the betterment of the game. In most cases, it is, and that's kind of what you want. So, you know, take it in stride. Understand that this isn't just because that, you know, this isn't just a direct nerf on you. It's to allow more skillful play, and you need that in a game like this because, you know, it's just the way the game is. You know, so I'm fine with that.
yeah. I'm one of the people who is in favor of a balanced game overall. I don't care if I get nerfed. As long as I remain viable, I'm happy.
Absolutely.
I don't like all the hate that Warriors are getting because of things we didn't ask for.
Exactly. I mean, again, in most cases, like you didn't ask for stuff like this. It just happened.
Yep.
You know, and in a lot of Warriors cases, who actually want to see this game do better, regardless if your class gets nerfed or not, that's fine. That's kind of how it should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I mean, you know, knowing that if my class gets nerfed, but the game is better for it and allows for skillful play, then absolutely, I have no issues there.
Yep. Honestly, as far as balance goes, I feel Guardian. I know you'll disagree with me in a number of places, but I do honestly feel that Guardian is one of the more balanced professions in the game
Oh, no,
at
I
the
actually
moment.
agree with you. We are the most balanced class in the game. We don't have anything that's ridiculously overpowered. You know, we don't. You know, it's obvious tells, constant, you know. There's nothing here that I see, again, and it's hard not to be biased talking about your profession, but I can't put out tons of damage and, you know, in an instant amount of time. It requires a lot of setup, you know, a lot of obvious animations, especially when you're looking at stuff like Whirling Wrath or Zealot's Defense. Those are pretty obvious. It's nothing. The only instant skill that we have that would apply a decent amount of damage would be Smite Condition, and that's it.
Yeah.
So it's, again, that's why I've always understood that, you know, I do believe that this profession is incredibly balanced in that regard.
Yeah.
However, I do believe there are a lot of weaknesses, so that need to be looked at, and I have a couple that I looked at, and it's something that I've noticed that, again, a lot of professions don't have. And it's really annoying that a lot of professions don't have these type of weaknesses, but the Guardian's the only one that does. And I'll go off when I say this. It's you have access to low mobility. You have no range damage whatsoever. Your range damage is junk. You're not going to do anything. What else? You have no mobility. You are actually one of the least mobile classes in this game. What else? You have again, lack of soft CC, lack of hard CC. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you just don't have, and you know, it's a problem when you look at stuff like, oh well, you know, it's more balanced because it's obvious animations, and that's fine. I'm cool with that, but you have to address these. You have to address a lot of these weaknesses to a profession that's primarily melee. You know, like for instance, if I close the gap on you, I should have, you know, a pretty distinct advantage if I'm primary melee. But the problem is you can't really do that if you have no mobility, you have no soft CC, and your damage is somewhat mediocre at best, and you're not even much of a threat. Like for instance, I'm going up against a bomb made NG. I'm already at a disadvantage at range, but when I close the distance, I'm still at a disadvantage because of bombs. So it's kind of like it's one of those things that doesn't make any sense, you know. So that's something that I was looking at.
Yeah. from a fellow heavy melee position, I do hear you on, like, for the example, the NG situation, but one thing you have to keep in mind is, from an engineer standpoint, what are they going to do against a melee bruiser coming in and starting going ham on their face? They have to have something to deal with what we can bring to the table. And
Right.
from a warrior perspective, I could definitely see why they would want to build to deal with heavy
Right.
melee because, well, warriors can deal out a lot of punishment in both control and damage. But I do agree with you from your standpoint, like, having played my Guardian and having fought several Guardians, I do see where you're coming from, where there isn't really, like, Guardians to me just don't have that punch. Like, they don't
Hmm.
have the force of a warrior. And I mean, I understand that they're two different professions. They're supposed to be different, but
Right.
as say a hammer guardian, outside of banish, I haven't really felt that there's a lot of, kick to their attacks.
Hmm.
Or, like, greatsword does feel kind of light, kind of whiffy. I mean, it does damage, it does control, it does stuff. It just doesn't seem to have the impact of a warrior. And again, profession differences, but it still feels like there should be something there. So I suppose the balance aspect, yeah, you guys are the most balanced, but it's also like you don't have, like, the fact that you don't have any outstanding traits or aspects, kind of, I don't know, like, not a detriment, just it kind of takes away from the
Right.
overall capability.
Absolutely. And again, I don't mind being balanced. I like playing a balanced game. I love it. It's amazing. It's so much fun. But I also want to be viable, you know? Like, for instance, I don't like the simple fact that someone is able to, keep me at range, but and I close the distance and still have an advantage on me. And you may disagree with me when I say this, but and I understand, but Guardians are, I would think, are the most melee-centric class because of our lack of range capability. You know, I mean, Scepter in general is a very bad weapon. It's very mediocre. It's very slow. It doesn't provide any. I can honestly tell you, my auto attack on Scepter rarely hits. It's incredibly slow, and believe it or not, it used to be slower.
Yeah, I
And
think I
they recently
remember.
buffed it.
I think I remember pre-buff Scepter autos. They were
Oh.
you could see them a mile away, and you'd have about a mile's worth of dodge time.
That's what I mean. Exactly. So that's just one of the problems that I've encountered. So I just feel that, again, as a primarily melee focused profession, if I'm not saying that classes don't deserve, some sort of, you know, counter to some, to make themselves viable in certain situations. Like, again, but the thing is, you have to have it on both sides of the coin. So every profession should have, like, say, again, being a guardian, I should have some range pressure to keep you, to make sure that I don't get totally decimated at range, where you as a range profession should have something so where you don't get destroyed at melee. But that's not the case right now. So that's that's one of the issues that I've been having.
Yeah, I would. In melee, I would. This is from perspective of, yeah, again, someone who has fought a lot of guardians. I won't call myself, experienced playing one, but I
You're
have
the
fought
pro.
many of them. I know,
You're the pro.
so pro with the level 28, but I guardians in melee, I feel like they can make a difference. They just don't have the impact of what my warrior has. But at range, it does seem like they lack capability, they lack potency at range.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I can see the Scepter being very good for group fights where you're not worried about where, like, your target is distracted and you can lay on the CC, or like group situations where you can drop a smite and you get a whole bunch of hits in, and you've got all, like, the Scepter, to me, like, the range capabilities of Guardian falls very much in line, in my opinion, with their support aspect. Like, you can roll around as a Guardian and do just fine with the Scepter when you've got allies around you. You've got people helping you deal the damage and helping you keep your targets distracted, so you can throw in those support deals. Same with I believe, is the focus. Because you've mentioned on a number of occasions how the focus, I think it's 4, will throw it. It's a really slow-moving projectile. It's a blind, and I think it does it burn.
No, it's no, it doesn't burn. It just gives you regeneration.
Okay. So yeah, again, it's more. It seems like to me the Guardian's range capability is focused around group play, and in say team situations like SPVP where you've got a few allies on a point, or in World v World where you're in a Zerg or a skirmish group, that seems like it would actually be really good. But in 1v1 situations, which is what you primarily deal with, other than your SPVP bouts, I could see it being very lackluster because you're not able to do really much of anything when they can see it coming. Like, all of your tells are too big for your range. Basically, the power to avoidability ratio there, just it's kind of out of whack when they're focused on you and you alone. But again, I think the reason why the Guardians' range skills are the way they are is because they're balanced around group play, and they're powerful in a group fight. It's just when you're by yourself versus one person, that's when they kind of lose their luster. Whereas a warrior, it's kind of the opposite. I mean, we've got a fire field and a blast finisher, but if you look at our fan of fire, which is, for those who don't know, the bow number 2, the bow number 5, pin down, smoldering arrow number 3, or I should say 4. Sorry, 3 is arcing shot. A lot of our bow stuff is pretty single target. I mean, and then you've got rifle, which is the extreme of that. Which for warriors, it's more selfish. It's got more potency, but less group play per se. Other than arcing shot and combustive shot, our bow is fair amount of single target, and then the rifle is pretty much entirely single target.
Right, exactly.
So I think that's where right now, I think that's what the balance is kind of played off of, is the Guardian at range is meant to be a group player, whereas the Warrior at range is meant to be a single target, almost sniper, for a loose use of the term.
Right.
And I guess literal use of the term in the case of kill shot, but
in some cases I can agree with that. But I've actually done quite a bit of research, and normally you'd be correct. But the funny thing about it is again, I don't know much about Warrior. I just roll with it because it's kind of fun in SPVP. But I was able to, and again, this kind of bothered me a little bit, being able to I was actually able to remove conditions from my party more frequently than my Guardian could. And the reason for that is because I was speccing into Warhorn and then Soldier Runes with shouts. So it was very interesting to see. Again, you're mostly, I think you're mostly correct, but I do believe the Warrior does obtain quite a bit of group play in some of those regards. Just most people, I guess, don't run them because they have better specs, and I understand that. But I mean, it's true. Their group play is mostly surrounded by, the range play is mostly surrounded by group aspects for it, and that's understandable. But the problem is that you can't have that and that just be their primary focus, especially when other professions may not be able to do it as good, but they're pretty close. So that's the problem that I've just been encountering just slightly.
Yeah. All right. I think since I figure we can try and limit this podcast to an hour instead of going hour and a half like we did last time. We could probably just jump into the kind of the inverse of what we did last time, which was you were leveling your warrior, and you were coming from like a person new to the profession perspective, and I was kind of the expert, the main warrior, whatever. Right. We can do an inverse of that this time, and I'll be the new warrior or the new guardian coming in, and you can be the kind of the expert. I'm not failing this time. I've got into the mists up. I can look at the traits.
Dude, I got faith in you, man. I got faith in you.
Well, you look at me last time. I was forgetting the names of my traits and lying about half of them.
Trust me, it's okay.
All right.
It's okay.
So yeah, we can just quick go through each line and just go about that. Okay, so just kind of derping around with my guardian when I was messing around in SPVP. I was a big fan of the virtue tree. Big fan of it.
Right.
Because there were a
For
lot
group
of...
support, right?
I need to remind myself what was in here. Oh, I know what it was. All of the play off of Aegis. All of the play...
Okay.
It was all of the play off of Aegis. Like, to me, that was very interesting. Not... To me, regarding the Virtues Tree, it seemed like it took Aegis, which is, you know, a fairly passive thing for the Guardian. I mean, you've got stuff that activates it, but you've also got your Virtue, which just kind of pops it periodically,
Right.
or if you activate it, it's an on-demand Aegis.
Mm-hmm.
This trait line, to me,
Right.
took that mechanic and made it more. It developed it more. Because you've got a whole bunch of stuff in here that it causes various effects to come out of using Aegis.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like you want it to proc. I may be looking at the wrong... Virtues is the one that deals with a lot with Aegis, right?
Well, there are a couple traits that deal with Aegis, depending upon the effect you're looking for. Like, for instance, you have Indomitable Courage, which will grant you and your allies, when you activate it, stability for 3 seconds when you pop Aegis. That's one of them. You have another one, which it's called Shattered Aegis, where when you proc Aegis, you give it to your party, and then when it's removed, you do damage, physical damage, and an AoE.
Alright.
It depends on what you're talking about.
Yeah, I may actually be looking at the wrong tree. I remember there was one where it was all sorts of effects based off of Aegis.
Right. It's probably the Virtues tree you're thinking of.
Yeah, maybe it just was Virtues in general, but I know there was one where whenever something happened to Aegis, there were a bunch of effects that came off of it.
The only ones I know of, that I believe off the top of my head, are the two I just mentioned.
Okay. Maybe I was just I saw more, I remember more things. It was a while. It's been a while since I was messing around with the Guardian.
Okay. It's not a big deal.
But
It's okay.
But going off of that, it takes the Guardian. It's much like the Discipline tree for Warrior. It takes the core mechanic, the core profession mechanic, like for Warriors Burst, for Guardians and Virtues, and it changes the gameplay. It enhances the gameplay of those abilities.
Right.
Like for Warriors, it's a lot more focused because we only have one ability per weapon. One burst skill. Whereas Guardians, you guys have 3 virtues at any given time.
Right.
So it's... But at the same time, it doesn't change with your weapon. So it's it's almost like this... They're more or less the same as far as gameplay goes, but you can have more things happen because... More variety of things happen because you have multiple virtues. Whereas Warriors, it's more...
Based on your weapon.
Yeah, more all of your burst skills do something. Now, I'm just looking at some of the ones that I have here, or some of the options. Because I remember when I was messing around with my Guardian in SPVP, I think I almost went 10-30, 0-0, 10-30, 30.
Okay, that's the standard bunker build. Okay.
Except I tweaked it around, which is what I typically do when I'm messing around with things. But the Virtues tree, the Virtues line just seemed very interesting to me because it had all of that play around the Virtues. Had the like you were saying, the stability, like the I think there was extra burning involved. There was the retaliation trait.
Yes. If you spec heavily into Virtues, you get a number of boons upon activation. That is correct.
All right. Again, I'm kind of fishing for stuff because I'm not the most familiar with Guardian. Now,
like I said, that's why I'm here.
Now, I suppose we can just go down the line for the next ones.
Okay.
And you remember what was in Zeal. Zeal had a lot to do with symbols. I didn't really mess around with this one much. This one seems to me like it would be very useful for group play. And in fact, I do see traits for Scepter and Focus in there, which ties into what we were talking about before.
Right.
As well as you've got the Great Sword in there, you've got Spirit Weapons. It seems like they took the offensive stat tree, and then they built it around being more offensive in a group situation, or
Sort of.
just having, yeah, it's like they took the offensive and then they threw in group play. Which,
Sort of. That tree is kind of messed up as it is. And what I mean by that is, when you mention Scepter and Focus, neither of these skills apply a symbol. And it's in what you would consider a symbol tree, right? So it's a little bit out of whack to begin with. Secondly, the whole basis upon symbols, normally what you would think is for group play, but the problem with that is that the benefit nor the as well as the hindrance of these symbols are not significant enough to where your allies or enemies will stay in them. So what I mean by that is, your ally, I can honestly tell you, like off the top of my hand, in one hand, I can't count on one hand like how many times my allies have ever stand in a symbol to gain its benefit. Not one. The benefit is too small. And secondly, my enemies, it's very difficult to keep your enemies inside of a symbol for more than maybe a second, only because, for one thing, they're too small, and two, they don't really have any sort of significant impact. Most of it is just damage, and even then, the damage is still pretty low. So, the whole idea behind symbols for me, I was never a fan of it. I think it promotes static gameplay, like, massively, because if I build like a heavy symbol build, the only benefit I'm going to get is from constantly popping it and standing in a very, very small circle, but it's not going to do much for me, because if someone decides to range me down, I may not die immediately, but I will still die, and I won't be able to do anything back because they're at ranged, and I'm still sitting in my symbol.
okay. Now, this, you were mentioning the size, and you were mentioning the fact that it doesn't do anything meaningful. What if, I'm kind of doing a reverse of what you did before, but we have this whole,
Yeah, we did. It was awesome.
propositions thing. What if the symbol radius was increased dramatically? Like, we're not talking, what it is now, we're talking maybe 2/3 the size of, say, the graveyard point in Legacy of Foefire. That would introduce, again, this is from my perspective as someone who doesn't have access to these types of things, it would provide more zoning, because it would maybe increase the values, but at first just trying out the radius, trying out increasing the radius, and making the symbols very much a thing, like making it so they're not as easy to avoid because they're so large. Otherwise, they would have to stay out of the area, which would allow, tying into group play, which would allow your allies to gain ground, push your targets, push your enemies out of that area, and just giving a group advantage. And also, that would solve the issue of your allies not standing in it, because it would be larger to accomplish that. Now, I can see what you're talking about with the static gameplay, because it's just making the area that you be static in larger, but I feel the whole issue is just the fact that they don't have an effect because no one stands in them. To me, from my perspective, it almost seems like it's just because they're too small. Like, you wouldn't even you wouldn't even have to change any damage or healing or boon values, just increase the size.
Well, the thing is, even if, again, this is just my perspective, and this is obviously, even if you were to increase the size, the threat value of it isn't very high to begin with. Like I said, most of these symbols, they only do direct damage, which is easily mitigated, right? So, and the damage isn't even very high unless you go heavy into power, which again, messes up your sustainability. So I'm not saying that wouldn't help. It would be nice, but it still wouldn't stop people, even if they were to stand in it. It still wouldn't hinder them at all, because it's just physical damage. These symbols don't apply anything else except just physical damage. They don't apply, like, say, chilling. They don't apply burning. They don't apply anything of significance that, even against like a heavy armor target, they would just stay in there. It wouldn't really do much. My proposal, again, would be get rid of symbols, transform them into mobile auras around the actual, guardian, get rid of the damage, and actually have some benefit or hindrance to your allies and enemies.
Okay. Yeah,
that way you wouldn't have to stand in one spot, to get any benefit, and you would still be able to support your allies who won't stand in that spot, because if you were to stand in that spot and say you get naded on, the amount of healing you get from Symbol of Faith is not going to do much against someone who's just constantly spamming marks or nades on you. So that would definitely help, I think.
Okay, I get you on that one. The mobile aura idea definitely, yeah, that one sounds interesting as well. With your point about them not being much of a threat, I can see where you're coming from. It's very similar to me going ham on another warrior's fire field. It's like it's there, it's doing damage, but I know I can take that damage, and the trade-off for getting in their face and controlling them and knocking them around is well worth the damage that I'll be taking running into that fire field.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, it's pretty much the same thing. It really is. Again, the physical damage is very insignificant to begin with, and again, it's heavily mitigated by the tanky meta that we have now. So it's even more mitigated. So it's just one of those things that I personally would not like to see in a mobile game that we have right now. This game is all about mobility.
Yeah.
You're not really. I mean, I know the game type is conquest, and you're supposed to hold a point. But if, for instance, if I'm fighting on a point, and I know the only way I'm going to win is if I get off the point a little bit and use my position properly, I'm going to do that. Because I would rather win that fight, potentially nuke the point and still get it back, than lose the fight, have a couple more points, but then it's neuted a couple seconds later and they get the point. So
yeah,
that's my line of thinking.
Yeah. All right. I guess moving on to Radiance. This is looking at your guys' Radiance tree. It reminds me of how our Arms tree used to be, where we really just had bleed, and like in your guys' case, it's all burning. Burning. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the Connie tree, but the thing is, and this is the exact same situation Warriors were in before we got access to Torment, and we got access to basically you can build Warriors to have a lot of conditions now. Before we got access to a little more condition variety, we really just had bleed for our damage.
Yeah.
And
kind of like what you are with kind of like with Guardians right now, or with just burning.
Yep. It's basically, to me, the Radiance tree is what the Warrior Arms tree used to be, where it's all focused around a single condition, which, yeah, you can pump a lot of damage out of that condition, you can apply it a lot, but the thing is, it's one condition, which means it's very susceptible to condition clearing. So, and with how many abilities clear multiple conditions now, or even just one, it's very easy to remove that one super damaging condition, and then your opponent doesn't have to worry about it. Look at Engineers, they've got several ways of clearing conditions pretty reliably, at least in my experience. I'm sure there are Engineers who would disagree, but coming from the perspective of someone who has fought a lot of Engies and had my conditions cleared for days, or Elementalists or Warriors, or just a large number. There are just a large number of kits that have good condition removal in them, and when you're looking at a profession that doesn't have access to a lot of condition variety, not so much just condition application, but condition variety, it hurts because you can't. The uptime it can't keep up with the amount of clearing that's going on. Now, when you've got something like, say, a Necro or an Engineer or a Connie built Warrior now, where they can apply a lot of different conditions at one time, that allows more condition, you could say, buffer time, or like a buffer between when the condition clears get to the actual damaging conditions, that those conditions can do their damage and actually be a threat. Whereas
they'll be buried, exactly.
Yeah, they'll be buried. By burying those conditions, you allow them to do their damage. Whereas with the Guardian, you guys pretty much just have what? Burning, blind, and
vulnerability.
Vulnerability? Yeah, it's
you have immobilization, but they're short duration.
Yeah,
so I guess you could count that. Yeah.
Immobilization, it's there, but it's balanced to be so short duration for most professions anyway, that you can't really count it as something that buries conditions, because it doesn't last long enough. But yeah, that again, just from the perspective of a Warrior, your Radiance tree reminds me of how my Arms tree used to be.
Right.
And
in a sense, I can see that, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things I've noticed with the Radiance tree, again, and I didn't really go too much in depth with the Zeal tree, but believe it or not, our Zeal tree is the worst tree that we all have. I'm sure, because every class has like one tree that just is terrible, that there's very little benefit, the traits are crappy, ours is Zeal. Now Radiance, again, there's quite a few, again, like the minor traits themselves, for instance, I was never a huge fan of traits that only procced upon rally or killing, because again, it didn't seem significant enough to me, in my opinion. So when I look at something like Renewed Justice, I think it's one of those really subpar traits that, again, that's only gonna happen maybe once, ever, because again, I have to kill someone for it, and that's it. But going into the major traits, for instance, and the one thing that I again, one of the strongest traits many people might consider is like a right hand strength. The increases of critical chance by 15% with one-handed weapons. Believe it or not, I don't even like that trait. Main reason, it forces me to use one-handed weapons on both of my sets.
Yeah.
I don't like that at all. I hate being pigeonholed. I would actually like to see this removed or reduced, honestly. Because again, I don't like to be pigeonholed to using specific abilities or, a mass amount of specific abilities or weapons. So that's one of the problems. And then other than that trait, every other trait in here honestly is incredibly subpar, aside from Powerful Blades, which just got a recent buff to bring it in line with other damage increases on a master tree.
Yeah, it looks exactly like my slashing power.
It is. It's exact. That's why they did it. That's exactly what, because it used to be 5%.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah. So they just recently buffed that. But everything else I look at, again, I just can't see myself ever using. So whenever I use the Radiance tree, it's always something always right hand strength, because it's the only good one that we have as a Grandmaster. When you look at perfect inscriptions, believe it or not, it's incredibly terrible, because I'd say the majority of all of our signets have very little use, and the passives, while can be pretty decent, the actives themselves are pretty trash. So no one would ever run a signet build, in my opinion. But if I'm running in Radiance, the adept, I'll probably do either Inner Fire or Blind Exposure, and then Powerful Blades, and then Right Hand Strength, because those are the only traits actually worth taking in that tree line, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from. Again, we discussed on the pilot episode that Warrior does have some subpar some subpar traits as well. So I definitely feel you on that one. All right, moving down to Valor. Just before even looking at the traits, I'm looking at what you guys have for your passive stat benefits, and it's not
interesting. Isn't it?
Not something I'd be used to seeing. You get toughness, which is to be expected out of tanky tree, but you also get crit damage. Of all things,
isn't that weird?
It's I don't really know how to react to it, because I'm not used to seeing that combination.
Believe it or not, this is one of the only trees that we are forced to take. Kind of like a lot of professions where they usually take their defensive trees, usually. So this is one of the trees that most Guardians, 99% of the time, will take, unless you're running a support bunker build, and that's it.
Okay. It sounds similar to how defense and discipline are for warriors, because you will see a very large portion of warriors running down defense, and then to a lesser extent discipline. Discipline, for the reasons that were discussed on the previous podcast, it just synergizes so well with everything, and defense, it just has so many good things in it, and it makes you kind of tanky at the same time. Now, looking at some of the stuff in here, I can definitely see why you say it's one that you feel a lot of Guardians would feel that they would be forced into doing, because you got stuff in here like using meditations heal you. You've got applying boon to allies heals you. That's group play. You got Fury Axis. You got let's see. You got crits with the hammer, which I feel the hammer is a pretty good weapon for Guardian.
You'd be surprised.
But then again, that's me. I'm a big fan of Banish for all sorts of reasons.
It used to be much better.
Yeah.
It used to be a lot more satisfying, let's just say.
But yeah, well, wow, I didn't even realize that Glacial Heart was a thing. You guys have access to chill, evidently.
We do, but you gotta look more in depth into that trait and see why no one will ever take
Yeah,
that
the 30-second intro cooldown, I could see hampering that a lot.
Oh yeah.
But yeah,
it's essentially a very weak version of Sigil of Hydromancy.
Yeah, I figured that. Then you got things like Purity in there. Yeah, I could definitely see why you guys would be pressured into running down this tree, because it does have a lot of very good benefits for you and for your allies. It's a very solid tree, just from my perspective.
In essence, yeah. In essence, and again, this is just for me personally. I look at it as a tree that is a must, but I don't find it to be that exceedingly amazing. Only because when you're given, it's like when you're given something that is better than everything else, it doesn't necessarily make it great to begin with. Does that make sense? Like you're kind of forced to take something because it's better than everything else you have, but when you compare it to something else, it's actually not that great. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I hear you on that.
So what I mean by that is, for instance, like let's go down the minors, for instance. Valorous Defense and Courageous Return, in my opinion, are incredibly bad traits.
Really?
Really bad. Valorous Defense, you gain 1 hit of Aegis, just you, when you hit 50% health on a 90-second internal cooldown. 1 block. That's it.
Yeah, that is one block that can prevent, say, a backbreaker or a backstab. You gotta remember that.
Yeah, but remember with backstab, you may block it, but they're still invisible, allowing you to pop up another one. So
True.
In that regard, it wouldn't help too much. And in regard from another profession, yeah, you're right. But the thing is with combat moving so quickly, that will be gone relatively quickly because of not only how fast the game's already progressing, but with the multitude of attacks that are being applied from your opponent. Most attacks in this game are very fast, hard-hitting attacks. So I find this to I just look at it and it's very.
Yeah, I suppose coming from my perspective as someone who uses very slow-hitting weapons, that trait is more impactful for me when I'm fighting Guardian using it because all of my attacks are slow-hitting and they're big trade-offs. When I miss one, it's much more of a loss than say if I was using a one-handed weapon or a faster weapon.
Yeah.
So when that trait is more impactful against like myself, say a hammer warrior, if I hit you with an auto attack, which pushes you to 50%, and that trait pops, and you've got that Aegis, as I'm already winding up my backbreaker, that immediately negates a large portion of the strength of my hammer, because
of course
that's a very powerful attack that just got negated by something that basically saved you. Now, I can definitely see where you're coming from with things like backstab, with things like pistol abilities, much faster abilities because they remove it right away and then they've still got they're still going and they can be repeated very quickly. Right. I think that trait works. It works a lot. To me, it seems like it would work a lot better in situations where you've got the heavy hitters, the slow heavy hitters, like a hammer warrior, like a hammer guardian. Like a
well, it can definitely save you in that regard. I'm not saying it then, but I just don't remember. I can't really count, like I said, on one hand how many times just this trait has ever saved me. Only because I'm constantly getting hit, and 1 block at 50% health, usually doesn't really do much for me. Again, I look at it and it's, especially with the internal cooldown being so ridiculously high, I don't know. It's one of those things that, again, it's one of those things where if you were to take it away, I don't think it would really hinder my gameplay at all.
Okay, I got you.
You know what I mean? It's because I don't notice it ever. Because the combat is going so fast and my health is dropping and increasing so fast that I don't even notice if my Aegis is even popping in the majority of cases.
I got you. Reminds me of certain minor traits in the tactics tree for warriors.
Indeed.
Let's see. The Courageous Return. Yeah, I could definitely see. I've never really been a fan of on rally traits because that implies you're going to be dying a lot.
Yeah. That's why I look at it and go, what?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of the inverse of, or kind of the opposite of why I kind of have a beef with a lot of the tactics tree minor traits for warrior is it implies you're going to be rezzing a lot, which, granted, it is the support tree for warrior, but that's a lot of time you're spent rezzing people when you could be doing other things. Now,
I was never a fan of traits that meant for being downed and whatnot. I like to keep you up. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Being down is something that you either failed or you got bursted or something like that, and you should be punished for it. I want to, traits that help to keep you up seem to be a little better, more appropriate.
Now, is there an internal cooldown on Might of the Protector?
There is not. That is actually what it is, as you see.
Okay, that actually looks like a strong. No, that actually looks like the exact same thing
it's
as.
actually stronger than yours, yeah.
Yeah, it's the exact same thing as our major trait, but
much
a minor.
and much stronger. Yours is like 8 seconds. This is 15.
Okay, yeah, on the
Trust me, I'm not disagreeing there. That's why I looked at that. I'm like, this is a good trait.
Yeah,
I'm not disagreeing whatsoever.
On the calculator I'm looking at, it doesn't have a duration or an internal cooldown.
Yeah.
Well, there is no
the funny
internal
thing
cooldown.
is that, well, again, it looks to be a very good trait, and it is a very good trait. But you also have to remember is, believe it or not, Guardians have the shortest duration blocks in the game. We don't have as long of a duration block as, say, a warrior and an engineer who uses a gear shield, believe it or not.
But
So this is more for active and time blocks. So for instance, like Aegis, a little bit on our shelter, and Shield of Wrath. We have more active blocks, but shorter duration blocks. Does that make sense?
yeah, I was about to say, don't you have access to more blocks?
We have access to more active blocks, yes. More access to active single blocks, but less access to longer duration blocks. If that,
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
Yeah, I understand it completely.
So this can be amazing, and it is. Don't get me wrong. I've gotten quite a bit of stacks of might from this being hammered in the middle of a fight, you know, popping my shelter and whatnot. I'm not disagreeing there, but don't make the mistake that this is an amazing skill because of the duration is just not there when you look at, say, for instance, again, gear shield or shield stance.
Yeah.
If it was, that would be probably overpowered. It would be. It probably would be. Imagine remember, shelter's on a 2-second duration. The other ones are on 3.
Yeah.
Imagine that extra second, dude. Jesus Christ.
Against a pistol thief or
Oh my God.
an XX warrior.
And you know the funny thing about it is, like, when you look at like Shield of Absorption, your shield,
Yep.
it says blocking attacks, but it doesn't block. It absorbs.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it doesn't count as blocks. So you actually don't get
No.
either protector from that. I think it should be changed to blocking, but whatever. I'm just gonna put that on you, man.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, it's okay. But that is one of the minor traits that I see that it's awesome. I love it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then
But one of the I'm sorry to cut you off, Shin.
Okay.
I apologize.
Go
One
for
of
it.
the things that it does kind of pigeonhole you a little bit, and what I mean by that is if you run something like this, you must always run Shelter as your healing skill because Shelter is the only duration block you have.
yeah.
You don't have any other duration blocks at all, so it kind of pigeonholes you a little bit. So, and the weirdest part is that this tree is heavily invested into like meditations, and the meditation heal grants you no blocks. So
Yeah.
you got to keep that just a tiny bit in mind. That's all.
Yeah, I got you. All right. I guess moving down to honor, I can quick take a look at what we got here. Okay, there's your vigor trait. Let's see. There's
I can
your.
honestly tell you that trait is the only thing keeping me alive on my DPS Guardian. I'm serious. That is the only thing. That meditation heal, while it's nice, it doesn't give me much sustain only because 3 out of the 4 meditations are on long cooldowns.
Yeah.
Like really long. They're 45, 50, and 60 seconds consecutively.
Oh, jeez.
The only short one's on a 20-second cooldown. That's it. So while this looks very appealing, and it is, it's not going to give me as much sustain as Vigor.
Yeah. Now I'm looking at the rest of the minor tracing on the tree, and this actually seems like a tree that it promotes the mobile gameplay because you've got the vigor gain.
You think so, right?
Yeah, you've got the vigor. I'm sure it's completely not, judging by your reaction. But you've got the vigor on crit, which, assuming you're critting, which I don't know if that's a given or not, you get more dodging. Then the next one over, your dodge rolls heal allies. That's basically the exact opposite of my reckless dodge, which
That is correct.
is damage on a roll. And then your last one, deal more damage at low endurance. That all 3 of them encourage dodging.
In essence, that is correct. You are right.
Now,
They all have to do with dodging in some degree or another.
yep. Now, looking at the first and the third, they almost seem to contradict each other because you're getting more dodge, but from vigorous precision, but then you're supposed to be getting benefit from not being able to dodge, like having low endurance. So it's like one is canceling out the other, or
It's very contradictive, believe it or not, because again, you're getting vigor, and one of the things you have to realize because again, this trait's called elusive power when you get the bonus damage when you don't have full endurance. Most smart players will not just pop a dodge just to get this damage. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, So it's very counterintuitive to the the design of getting vigor and keeping your endurance up and using your dodges in a smart manner. In my opinion, it should be damage. It should be when it's full. You know what I mean? When you have full endurance, you get the damage. That way, you use your dodges in a more appropriate manner. That's all. I don't know.
Yeah, I could see why you'd be of that opinion. Let's see. I'm looking at the major traits now. Because again, when I was messing around with my Guardian, I pretty much just rolled with it because I was getting footage for the sake of getting footage. I wasn't really doing much in depth. I was going to use more of the research time for this podcast.
Right.
Let's see. Virtue Resolve, that I believe was, that's the healing one. Yeah, Honor definitely, going by, it definitely looks like the one that would be the healing centric one, because
That's correct.
You guys get healing power and you get vitality, which means
this is more of the support tree.
Yeah, it definitely looks like a support tree. I've noticed that with a lot of professions, where your top one is your direct damage, your second one is your condition, the third one is defense, your fourth one is support, and your fifth one is kind of based around your
class.
Or your profession mechanic. Pure Voice, I'm acquainted with this one very well, even though I'm not familiar with Guardian, because I have shared in the both the benefits and the nerfing of what it does. Quick breathing with the Warhorn was the exact same way with the Warrior. It was a bug where we would remove one and we would also convert one for conditions.
That's right.
You guys have the same thing with your shouts. It's a good trait. It's still a good trait, I would say, from my perspective, because I love quick breathing as well. Even in its current form, it's still fantastic. It's a bit more niche, but it's still good. Symbols heal allies. I guess this is rolling back into what you were saying about symbols earlier, where if they weren't the way they are, it would be better.
Well, because again, that minor healing isn't going to do much for you. You're looking, that trait will give you 130 a second if you stand in there. That's not going to do much against someone, again, nading you, hitting you from afar. It's very minor. That's why I can't see myself ever really taking it.
Yeah. Now, the two-handed mastery, as a warrior, it's kind of strange to me seeing this one, because the warrior has all of its cooldown traits split up. We have
Yes, you do.
we have one trait that will do two things to one weapon type, whereas I notice a lot of other professions have one trait that will do one thing to multiple weapons. Like in your case, two-handed mastery. This will affect both your greatsword and your hammer.
And staff, yes.
And staff. Whereas for us, it's like, say, Merciless Hammer, it does more damage on knockdown targets, and it only reduces the cooldown of hammer skills. We have another one for greatsword. We have another one for axe. There's
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of. Believe it or not, I don't even like this skill, only because, again, it goes back to what I was talking about with right-handed strength. It sort of forces me to use only two-handed weapons. And I'm not a fan of being forced into use something because of a specific trait only affecting a group of weapons instead of... I would actually have it be single, kind of like a warrior, believe it or not.
Yeah.
I would love to have separate traits affect, certain weapons instead of a blanket, trait that affects multiple weapons.
Yeah, and I could see that working, because you guys have enough weapon access to where you could split that up between the trees and not have it be too watered down, I guess. The only professions I would really see that being an issue on would be engineer and elementalist, because they're relatively limited in the weapon variety they have. Now, granted, the elementalist has a bunch of attunements, and they have a bunch of traits right now that play off of those. The same thing with the Engie. They've got a bunch of kits and traits that play off of those kits, each individual kits. So, I mean, it's a give and take. It's whatever, but I could see it working for Guardians. I could see it working for Thieves. I could see it working for a bunch of different professions. Now, Empowering Might, that looks like a support one. Again, symbols last longer, the same thing with the whole discussion about the symbols. Pure of Heart. Okay, now I remember what I was talking about with the whole Aegis thing.
Oh, that one, yeah.
Yeah, the build that I had, this is why I had the whole Aegis thing stuck in my head. It was because when I was messing around in SPVP, I saw all these Aegis traits in the different trees, and I made a really weird, Aegis build out of them. Yeah, it didn't work out in the end, but again,
No,
that's
it's not what again most people think.
yeah.
You'd be surprised.
But basically, I saw all these things and I'm like, ooh, that's actually really cool gameplay, and that's the type of things I like looking for. I like looking for strange combinations that work. And obviously, when my experimentation with the Aegis build didn't work, but the whole like I like what Pure of Heart does. It's cool. You're getting rewarded for having that Aegis removed when it's being removed regardless.
Right.
So it's an advantage to you. With honestly, as far as Pure Heart goes, with that trait, it seems to me that Aegis is a benefit to you regardless of its state. If it's on, it's a block. If it's off, it's a heal.
Well, yeah, you're right. And I've actually tried an Aegis build like this a long time ago, adding a bunch of Aegis traits and seeing what I could do. The problem with that is, again, with the massive cooldown that Aegis is already on, being 90 seconds untraded, and then I think it's 80 seconds. Give me a second. I'll just go full into here and see what happens. It is 69 seconds when you fully trade it. The thing with that skill, and the reason why it should be changed, in my opinion, from a burst heal to regeneration is because when you first go into a fight, the majority of the time you already have Aegis up and you're already at full health, and your Aegis is going to go down the first hit you take. You're not going to get any healing. So
Right.
your first Aegis is already wasted. The
Right.
next Aegis you get is at half health, or if you pop it again. Right?
Yeah. Okay, I see where you're coming from with this because
Mhm.
yeah, it's the design of the skill kind of punishing you for what you would think would be a boon or would be a
Yeah.
benefit. Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from with that one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's an
So
interesting
that would
one.
definitely be nice. A nice little change.
Yeah. Let's see.
Again, this I can believe that they actually buffed this. This used to be a lot weaker. Again, without any healing power, you're looking at. I'm just gonna go with 300 healing power. Without any healing power, you're getting like 650. Again, I don't find that to be too much, but then again, I don't want it to be too much, or else it's just gonna be way too strong. And the mere fact that if you do trade it, it affects your allies as well. So if you pop it, you're gonna give your allies all Aegis, and whenever it's removed, they all get a burst heal of about 600. While it's all well and good, it's not significant enough to me, in my opinion. A 600 heal, again, when you're taking thousands of damage, I can never see myself really taking it, especially with the limited access you have to Aegis to begin with. One, because it's on a massive cooldown, and two, the only other utility that gives you Aegis is retreat, and that's it, which is also on a very long cooldown.
Yeah.
So it's it's just one of those things, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it's just the way Aegis is kind of spread out throughout the class that would cause issues when otherwise we're like, oh, this is amazing. And then looking at the kind of the last two, you got
Your voice and battle presence.
Oh no, I was actually going the other way. I've been going from the top to the
sorry.
bottom. I was looking at Superior Aria and Wrathful Spirit. Those two they look pretty neat to me. I mean, Wrathful Spirit turning Aegis into retail, and I know Guardians can build to have really, really nasty retail. And then, Superior Aria shouts recharge is like 1 capacity for warriors.
That's right.
It's very
This
clearly
used to be a lot stronger. This actually got nerfed pretty hard.
How to get it nerfed?
It used to apply 10 seconds of retaliation when you removed Aegis.
Oh, okay.
Now it's down to 3.
Oh.
It used to be incredibly powerful, but 3 seconds, and again on a long duration cooldown of Aegis access. Again, I don't use it anymore after it got nerfed because of that. Now don't get me wrong, I don't even like retaliation. I think it's one of those boons that has terrible design that you get punished for attacking. I think it's a bad design boon to begin with. And one thing that most people don't realize is that retaliation is incredibly weak when applied to one person, but it's very powerful when applied to a group. So if I'm fighting a thief on a point and I pop retaliation, I'm only going to be returning like 250 damage a hit while he's backstabbing me for 6k.
Yeah.
So, but on the same token, if I give it to my allies and we're fighting at a point, all of us have retaliation, and say someone pops a lot of AoE, you're getting 250 from multiple sources, which can stack up. So it's a very situational boon.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like the situation with like the conjure removal on, say, Warhorn with Warrior. That it was the discussion we had during Zipper stream that one time, where by itself, when it's just you, it's kind of, it's whatever. But in a
Right.
group situation, it's extremely powerful because of, it's multiple people that it's affecting. Its worth is increased because it's doing more across multiple people. But again, by itself, it's kind of whatever. It's kind of lackluster. All right. That about wraps up the hour. I'd say I'd say I'm pretty proud of the fact that we were able to, get it on time for our second one, and hopefully the audio was better this time. Hopefully. I know I didn't screw up on any info this time. I went back and watched the pilot episode. I'm like, I said that? That's completely wrong. Why did I say that?
That's right.
That's terrible. Like I said we had a sword cooldown trait last time. Warriors do not have a sword cooldown trait. And I listened to it. I listened to myself spam so hard. And there were a couple other issues in there. I'm just like, oh, why did I do that podcast immediately after waking up? But yeah,
okay.
I'd say we can just wrap it up with, you can go ahead and plug yourself. I could plug myself, but people are kind of on my channel at the moment.
You should do it anyways, because they may not realize where they are.
I guess. I mean, the podcast people could find it later, or the people who listen to it later, but then again, they would be on my YouTube if they were getting it there. But yeah, go ahead and plug yourself.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Once again, thanks guys for coming in. We are still doing more. We're still doing more class-focused podcasts. I'm not sure which class we'll do next or when we'll do it, but again, we're gonna have to bring in someone else to do it. So thanks again for coming by. I'm Arken. I really appreciate it.
Yep. You stream at plug.
One second. I'm trying to find it.
I'm giving you the floor.
I know you're giving me the floor, and I appreciate that. I'm trying to find it.
Time Bomb beat you to
Here,
it.
I'll just link it. Is that cool?
Yeah, Time Bomb beat you to it, though.
Oh, he did? There you
yes.
go. Well, he knows it better than I do.
But yeah, guys, check out Arken. His old account got hacked for whatever reason, so he's under the alias Big Heart Gamer now. Just check him out. Give him some viewer love. He's definitely a good time to watch, hang out, talk with. And then, I guess, because I can, I am on Shinryu-ku. You're here, whatever. Like, I can't make this like serious because everyone knows where it is.
Sure.
But no, guys, we will be doing more profession-specific ones in the future. We'll be getting guests on. Like, we'll be doing the expert thing, but it'll be a third person. And that way we'll kind of get the whole new perspective versus an expert. That whole thing going. So we'll have 3 people on in the future, so we get more perspectives and whatnot in different professions. But yeah, we're gonna try and be a bit better about doing these more often, guys. Because how long was it since we did the first episode? 2 weeks.
It wasn't that bad.
Okay, I was thinking it was more along like 3, but
No, it was like 2 weeks because we were supposed to do it, I believe, last week, but no, wait, maybe it was 3. Oh,
yeah, because we did it. We were gonna do it the weekend after, and that fell through because I was feeling ill, and then we were gonna do.
I was working.
Yep.
Next weekend, and then.
And then we're almost up to the 3-week mark. So, yeah, we're gonna try and get better, guys. We'll try and do better about the timing thing. But yeah, for now, guys, that's gonna be it for the Shin-Arken podcast this time. Shin-Arken. You agreed to this name.
That's an awesome name.
The Shin-Arkenisms. It's like shenanigans. Shin-Arkens.
That's freaking
The Shin-Arkens. But yeah, guys, I know there are a number of people who are curious. I will be doing my normal stream after this. Don't fret. So, Arken, are you going to be streaming anytime after this podcast?
Potentially, maybe. I do not. Maybe.
Maybe. Possibly.
Maybe. Possibly.
Possibly, maybe. Alright.
No.
But that is it. Thank you to everyone who's been hanging out in the stream chat. I apologize that I haven't been doing my normal interactivity, but this is a podcast. We can't be filling up the airtime with, talking to viewers, because that's not what a podcast is. That's what the streams are for. So, see you guys then. See you guys when we see you. And thanks everyone for listening. If you're listening on the later actual podcasty part, thank you for tuning into the recording. Much appreciated. You guys are awesome. Take care, guys. See you later.